Great. So this is actually week like 92 or 93 or something of the weekly discussions, and we're pulling back a topic that we meant to discuss last month, but I actually had a car issue. I think I got a flat tire that day and couldn't make it to my computer in time. So I was stranded in Columbia Heights for like 3 hours and got pranked by like kids who lived there. And yeah, it was actually a pretty crazy afternoon, but hopefully this discussion will be equally as intense and interesting. And we're just going to survey a few of the most influential EA forum posts. And what I thought I would do is I would pull from the forum posts that were like highest rated of all time across many different years. And what I found was that like all of the most upvoted forum posts are from this past year. And maybe I'm just really dense and didn't realize how to do a filtered search, but I really think that maybe a lot more people are on the forum now, and posts that were released in the last year are actually almost exclusively belonging to those that are, or rather the posts that are most upvoted from all time are almost exclusively posts that were from the last year. So here's just a few of them. I want to highlight a couple of these, just give a really short summary of them, and then ask you all if you've read any of these or what posts you have read that were particularly interesting or influential to you. Good. So this first post was from Will McCaskill, and this was earlier this year, and he wrote about EA and the current funding situation. And if you wanted a summary of this post, you could also watch his talk at the EA Global earlier this year. And Will talks about how the EA movement, it began quite small and quite grassrootsy, sort of in an underground office in Oxford. And now it's become quite large, and it was on the cover of Time, at least his recent book was, just a few weeks ago. And it has upwards of $30 billion committed to it, and so forth. So Will points out that the funding situation is quite different. We don't need to think as much anymore. We, as in him and also many others who are highly involved in the movement, don't need to think as much anymore about where marginal personal donations go as the most important, most impactful thing to think about. He talks about sins of omission as well as sins of commission, which was maybe kind of like a new distinction for EAs who haven't been familiar with this concept. As Christians, we talk about this in Sunday school growing up. And encourages everybody to be judiciously ambitious, right? Really aiming high, because impact is probably skewed towards the tail, meaning by far the most impactful things are going to be really risky projects that happen to pay off, as opposed to really safe bets. And so McCaskill really encourages people to be ambitious, to really take tough shots, go for large, risky projects, but at the same time be judicious about that, not to throw away optics, and be really reckless with how money is being spent, or to be careless in a PR sense, and also to just make calculated risks, not just risks for risk's sake. So this is a really good post, and it got a heck of a lot of upvotes. I think this is the most upvoted post of all time. So I think the second most upvoted post of all time is one that is related to something we just talked about, which is the whole optics issue with EA having a lot of money now. And this is from George Rosenfeld, who started EA for Jews, along with Ben Schiffman and one other fellow. And he writes that free spending EA might be a big problem for optics and epistemics. And he identifies all these different ways that EAGs flying people out from all over the world, how that might be perceived as really reckless, and just like might draw the wrong attention, and might attract people to EA who are in it just for, not for altruistic purposes, but just in it to gain connections and grow a network, or just like go to really fun conferences. And yeah, people, I think in my circles, people have been talking about this post so much. And I guess a lot of people have been talking about this thing, not particularly about this post, but the post does a great job of identifying this phenomena and putting it in a few hundred words. So yeah, another post is called Critiques of EA that I want to read by Abraham Rowe. I don't know Abraham, but this is interesting. He draws up a bunch of different problems with EA that he hasn't read anything about. So there's one about like how funding is distributed in the EA movement for organizations in a way that maybe prioritizes jargon and like NGO leaders who understand the jargon and have personal relationships with funders instead of actually like on merit. He talks about critiques of EA that, yeah, the point to how it's becoming socially difficult to not be a long-termist in EA circles, especially like in the Bay and in other places. Lots of interesting critiques of EA that he draws up here. And then a final post that I want to just mention that's also quite upvoted is this really short post called EA for Dumb People. And I love the image here. I think I added that actually later, but I kind of wish now that every EA forum post had an image that went along with the header, so we can kind of recognize it and remember it more with that image. But yeah, this is a super honest post about how this person, I don't know if it's a pseudonym or the real name, Olivia, identifies as like a pretty normal person and not someone who went to Oxford or Harvard, not somebody who is like super successful and has like a super good pedigree but in worldly standards, but still wants to do good, still thinks that EA is something really important, but doesn't feel like they belong in EA, or at least isn't reassured that they belong. And yeah, and how that's quite a challenging thing. And that kind of raises this question, like, is EA for everybody? Is EA for people who are below average IQ? And if not, is EA talking about that in the right way? And if so, it doesn't seem like EA is affirming that the way that it should. So yeah, I'd love to discuss these, or just I'm curious how often you guys read the EA forum. If you've read any of these posts, do you have a favorite EA forum post, or what's one that's been really influential on your views or your life choices? And then I'm also curious if you have like a favorite EA for Christians blog post or yeah, blog or post that maybe influenced you. There's been a lot that have influenced me. Just to name a few, like one that influenced me was the John Wesley post about earn all you can, save all you can, give all you can. Another one is this post about using reason in prayer and decision making, and how maybe it's okay to default to reason, at least for many choices in life. Maybe how that's what God wants us to do. So yeah, love to discuss now, but thanks for listening through this intro.